So Themba, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we go into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your own backgrounds?
Oh, okay.
Where did you grow up?
I was born and bred in Soweto, a township called Dube.
Dube birds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, from a very religious family. Both parents very religious.
All right.
5 siblings.
Yeah.
Did all my schooling in Soweto
Okay.
until I matriculated. So the first time I went outside of the province was when I went to varsity for the first time, and that was in 1983.
Right.
And the plan was not to leave Gauteng. I've always wanted to be in Gauteng. So I applied to VETS, but during the apartheid years was told that there's a university for Zulu speakers. So I needed to get permission from the Minister of White Education, who happened to be F.W. de Klerk at the time, and applied for permission to study at VETS. He declined, and I was told to go to University of Zululand. So that's when I went to do my first year varsity at University of Zululand.
Yeah.
After the first year, there was a bit of violence on campus. 5 people were killed, 4 students, and 1 member of Inkatha, the IFP,
Right.
was killed during that incident. And after the violence, I couldn't go back to the University of Zululand. So I reapplied at VETS, and I was admitted, and that's where I did all my education. Did my BA and LLB at VETS, then went on to do an MBA with De Montfort University, which had an office here in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
So that's my education.
And Themba, what did you have a dream career when you grew up?
When I grew up, I've always wanted to be a lawyer, but did not have the confidence that I would actually reach that goal because, firstly, my parents did not have the money to take me to varsity, but secondly, I was not confident because it was just after the Soweto uprising. So I wasn't confident that I was going to pass matric. Nobody in my family, immediate family, had actually passed matric. So I also did not have expectation to proceed with my studies. I wrote the matric examinations, passed, and realized that actually my dream was within reach. So I started studying towards a legal career.
And
So I've always wanted to be a lawyer.
And tell us, Themba, who inspired you in your early days?
The inspiration was obviously my old man, my father. Hardworking man, raising a family, always having relatives living with him there to make sure that he gives them opportunities. And he inspired me to work very hard and achieve my goals. And I had already started reading a lot about political leaders of the ANC. I knew about the role that Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo played in setting up their own first law firm in Johannesburg. And I saw that they were helping a lot of poor people who were suffering because of the apartheid laws at the time. So I thought that's what I wanted to do.
And Themba, where did you start your career?
Well, I was studying at VETS, preparing to become a lawyer. I got involved in politics. I became a student leader. My student activism got me involved in broader education struggles. I joined the National Education Coordinating Committee, which was the NECC, as a student leader, and we started developing policies for a new democracy that we were aspiring for at the time. And when democracy came, I was elected into parliament. I became an MP. But my first salary came from the NECC. That's the first time I worked. From there, I became a politician. I served a year in parliament. And then from parliament, I went into the public service. I joined the Gauteng Department of Education as its first head of department. In fact, I created that department with my team. And basically that's how my career took off. So I ended up being a civil servant instead of following my dream of becoming an attorney. So from Gauteng Education, I left public service for about 8 months. I joined a private company called Damlin. I was the MD of Damlin Education Group. And after that, government called again. I went to work as DG of Public Works. From Public Works, I went to government communications. I became CEO there and ended up being government spokesperson. From there, I went to public service and administration, and that's about it as far as the working career is concerned.
And
I did have a stint as head of communication at the Business Leadership South Africa for about 12 months.
right.
Yeah, so that's my
And
working career.
Themba, looking back over your career, can you maybe share a couple of highlights? The best moments?
I think that the best moments, I must say, would be when I was working as government spokesperson. I think that it gave me an opportunity to be of greater service to the nation by telling the nation what government wanted to achieve, what is government's program, making sure that messages reach out to each and every corner of the country, sitting in cabinet meetings, listening to those important debates that were taking place then, and being able to come out and tell the public what cabinet had decided on particular issues of interest to the country. Understanding how to communicate messages, understanding how important it is to listen to what people are saying out there before government can actually communicate. So managing research projects, conducting perception surveys to just understand what do people think of government's work, government policies, and how it's actually impacting on their day-to-day lives. So that was, in my view, the highlight of my working career now.
And Themba, would you say there was a major turning point?
I think that was a major turning point in my career, because I'd never thought in my life I would be known for communication as a communication expert.
Right.
I've always wanted to be a lawyer, but that GCIS job created a totally different world for me, and I really enjoyed that. So it was a turning point.
And Themba, what is driving you today?
Well, I think I'm still very, very passionate about strengthening our democracy. I spend every minute of my time thinking about what we could be doing better as a country, as a people, what government could be doing better, but most importantly, what individuals can do to make our democracy stronger.
Right.
So that's really driving me, and I'm very passionate about transforming our society.
Now, Themba, talking about leadership, and I know it's a big question, but what would you say, what does the future of leadership mean to you?
I think it means we need to develop a generation of young, visionary, passionate, hardworking, highly skilled individuals. And I think that future leaders need to be able to work with people, create an environment where people can actually achieve their dreams, their goals, while at the same time making sure that the organization in which they're operating is actually achieve its goals. So aligning individual goals and company goals or departmental goals, in my view, are very strong elements of leadership for the future.
And Themba, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
I think, firstly, one of the things I learned is that you got to be passionate about what you're doing. You got to have a very, very strong vision. You got to be a hard worker. You got to also read and try to learn something new each and every day. And lastly, I would say learning to manage and work with people. I think that's an important skill that future leaders need to have.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter how intelligent or how smart you are, unless you're able to work with people and make people believe in themselves to help you achieve your goals. I think that's an important skill that future leaders should have.
And Themba, as a communicator, what is it you tell future leaders? How should they communicate on social media?
Social media is becoming a very important component of public life, and I think that it is very important that leaders firstly participate in those platforms, because those platforms give you a sense of what ordinary people are worried about on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's important to be there to understand what is happening in the outside world. But secondly, it's important to also express your views on important issues and make sure that you help shape debates that are taking place in society, because unfortunately we have what they call millennia, that is younger people who've not had the experience that many of us who've been around have had, who do not understand, for example, the history of this country. And I think that it's important for leaders to be present in those kinds of debates to help shape and guide discussions that are taking place in those platforms, so that when young people are participating in these platforms, they actually do so from an informed point of view. Because if you just let this platform exist without some kind of direction and leadership, chances are that we will have many social problems existing in societies.
Right.
For example, the issue in South Africa, the issue of race, is an important debate, it's an important issue, and I think that society is not doing enough to make sure that we manage and build what Madiba used to call a rainbow nation. Getting youngsters of all races to actually understand that this is their country, all of them, and that they have an important role to play. And I think that leaders can play an important role by being present in the social media space.
Right. Now, Themba, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are the new skills you would want to factor in?
I think that I'll start with a skill on how to manage people. I think that many leaders tend to forget that what makes them successful are the people who work below them. So managing people to make sure that you create an environment within your work organization that enables people to actually excel and realize their full potential. So managing people is very important. Obviously, we're living in an information age, so it's absolutely vital that leaders themselves read, do research, and make sure that they are ahead, a few steps ahead of the people they're working with, so that they can actually provide guidance and support to the people who report to them. So I think that reading is very important. Obviously, we're living in a technology age, so leaders need to know how to use the tools that the information age is providing so that they can communicate regularly to their staff, get feedback, give people the tools to be able to enable them to actually perform better in their work environment. So those are some of the skills that future leaders will have. But lastly, I would say understanding context or the environment in which you are working, absolutely vital. And that means that leaders need to make sure that they keep a very close relationship with stakeholders to understand what stakeholders think about their organization and how the organization can actually be responsive to the needs of stakeholders. Because now leaders have to think more than just about their employees, their shareholders. They also need to think about the external environment and make sure that their organizations are socially conscious about what's happening out there.
And Themba, looking back over your own leadership journey, what is your advice for future leaders? What kind of challenges should they expect? What are the pitfalls and maybe the roadblocks on a leadership journey that future leaders should be aware of?
Well, future leaders need to be aware that now the workforce, people who work for them, are getting younger, and therefore they need to introduce a culture in an organization that allows younger people to be able to feel that they can work in an environment where management could be older people, older generation, and they must be able to actually operate in that environment. The culture in organizations must also be able to accommodate the different cultures that exist within an organization. So, because in the past it was possible for a company to exist and employ people coming from one particular culture group. But now our cultural environment is changing, the environments in companies and departments is changing. So the scale, the ability to manage people in a way that accommodates the different cultures that exist in work environment, I think it's a very important skill and a challenge that all managers need to actually have. We're living also in an information age that requires highly skilled people, so training people. Because what you were likely to see in the future is that universities are increasingly not preparing their graduates for the work environment, the new work environment. So there is a mismatch between the skills that people are coming with and the requirements of industry. So it becomes important that training and preparing your new employees to work in the environment that you're creating in a company is also an important challenge that all leaders must be alive to.
Now, Themba, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Well, I've always believe that as a leader, you need to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, who know more about the job than you. And it therefore becomes important that you create an environment where people can actually feel that they are well appreciated in the work environment. So in all the organizations that I've led, I've always made people feel that they have a contribution to make. So I create space for them to bring initiative, to come up with new ideas, but support them. So I can't think of a particular individual that I can highlight at this stage. But all people who have been part of my teams will tell you without any shade of a doubt that I've created a team spirit, team effort, working together, respecting each other, and making sure that we all contribute towards the success of the organization. So the success that I think I've achieved in all my working organization is largely due to the people I've worked with, people who have reported to me. I've created space and opportunity for them to actually be successful in their work environment. So I would say all the teams that I've led, I've actually mentored them, and I think they've become better managers in their new environment.
Right. And Themba, looking back over your leadership journey, are there any role models of leadership that you encountered, maybe in your career, in your community, in your environment, that you would recommend future leaders should learn from?
Well, there's one person that I've always looked up to. My life has been, working life has largely been in the public sector. And there's one person that I've really looked up to, who may be surprised to hear this, but it is Reverend Frank Chikane, who was the DG in President Mbeki's office. I think that he taught me a lot of things. I learned a lot of things from him. These include, for example, being able to work with people who hold different views from you. Because we tend to surround ourselves with people who idolize us. And therefore, we end up not learning much from them. We don't end up teaching them too much. So in that political environment, Reverend Frank Chikane demonstrated a willingness and an ability to work with people who hold views that were diametrically opposed to his own views. But he was able to actually bring people together to work as a team to share a common vision and idea about how to proceed in one direction, even if we hold different views. It taught me the importance of working hard, reading and preparing for meetings, but also, most importantly, to be compassionate, to be passionate about what you do, and lastly, also to be humble. One of the major mistakes that leaders make is that they develop egos too early in their working career, and they end up believing that they're more important than anybody else who's working with them or around them. So with Reverend Chikane, he became a role model for me, because I saw somebody who knew that he was in a very powerful position, but never made you feel that you are smaller than him. He made you feel like you are a colleague. So I think that's an important leadership quality that I've learned from.
And Themba, how can our listeners follow you, and where should they connect with you?
Well, I'm very active on social media. My number one social media platform is actually Twitter.
Oh.
I've got lots of followers. I exchange views with them.
Right.
So my Twitter handle is very simple, Themba Maseko.
Right.
And my name will appear there. I'm also active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Not as active as I am on Twitter. I also have an account on Facebook, but I'm not very active there.
Right.
Yeah.
And Themba, your book is coming out in October.
In October, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what to expect?
Well, I'm talking about the challenges that I've experienced working for government, some of the achievements, some of the good times, some of the bad times, my experiences with the Gupta family when they were trying to capture the state, or when they captured the state actually, the pressure that they were putting on me to actually channel funding, advertising funding to their company without following due process. So I'm going to be giving a lot of details about how that unfolded. But I'm also going to be talking about the importance of ethical leadership in both public and private sectors. So it's going to be an interesting book. I'll talk about whistleblowing as well, because I think it's important that we we think about whistleblowing as a nation. I don't think that we've done enough to look after those people who have exposed corruption. Those who have exposed corruption end up being victims. They lose their jobs, they lose their careers, and there's just no safety net that is provided by society, both business and government, to make sure that those who expose corruption can still continue to find employment, make a living, and still make a contribution to society. So I'll dedicate a full chapter on whistleblowing.
Coming out in October?
In October, it will be.
And the title?
Title not yet decided. We think that my editor and I think that we should write the story, and when the story is complete, we then decide how to...
The title will appear.
The title will write itself.
Right. Yeah. Now, last but not least, Themba, what is your advice for future leaders that they should implement in their own lives?
Well, I think that future leaders need to be exemplary, need to be ethical. I think that it becomes important, especially at a time when so much is happening in our public life as far as corruption is concerned. And I think that our leaders need to show a high level of intolerance to corruption, promote ethical behavior in their work environment, promote hard work, promote people skills in their organization, and make sure that opportunities are given to younger people. Make sure that leaders encourage and promote people to get involved in their communities, and stop expecting change to come from somewhere else. That each and every person must become an agent for change. It's no longer about how much you can complain, but it's what is it that you can do as an individual. And I think that leaders must lead by example, by showing their involvement in communities as well. I think that's an important example that leaders should show.
Well, Themba, thank you very much for sharing your insights and your wisdom.
Thank you.
And reminding us that communication and people skills are at the heart and core of leadership.
Yep.